Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Dana Grant. Dana, excited to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you, Gresham. It's nice.
Yes,
You're
it's
such good energy. Our little talk already, such good energy.
Yeah,
Love
absolutely.
that.
We had a phenomenal talk. We should have just hit record there. But of course, before we jump in and actually have the conversation that everybody's going to hear, I want to read a little
Mhm.
bit more about Dana so you can hear about some of those awesome things. And Dana
Yeah.
is an international master life and business coach, host of global retreats, keynote speaker, and co-founder of Cauliflower Foods. In 2018, she expanded her work across the globe hosting masterclass in Paris and Amsterdam, and continues to hold intimate, life-changing retreats in Italy. She is co-founder of the Women's Success Summit and a proud mentor for the Chico Start and CSU Trusted Peer Mentor programs. Dana has worked with some of the most respected professionals in multiple fields today. Her background as a business lobbyist, years of working with addiction, and her extensive experience in the corporate and solopreneur world has allowed her to create programs utilized by professionals around the globe to assist in process transformation. And one of the things we were talking about before, we hopped
Mhm.
on is, and it really stuck with me, is Dana said that everybody can be an entrepreneur. And I'm sure a lot of the things
Mhm.
that she does and things we'll talk about today will kind of bring that to light. But one of the things that really stuck with me as well is she had this message where she says, situations don't stay stuck, people do. So I think she probably helps out so much in terms of us getting unstuck and realizing the potential that we have. So Dana, excited to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Oh, I'm so ready. I'm excited. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get it started then. So, to kind of kick everything off, what I wanted to do was rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
Wow. I think I was born a CEO. I come from a generation of, my father came from a generation of factory workers in Oakland. I'm like 5 generations of Oakland, California. And he just knew he was so hungry to own his own business. And I watched that at a very young age. I watched him struggle and build and sacrifice. I mean, he owned a delivery truck. He worked for it first and he delivered back then candy and cigarettes.
Mhm.
And I was always so excited to get the candy when he came home, the big white van. But it was the dream. We had the campers and the cabin. I watched our life build out because his dreams were coming to fruition. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and until the divorce in 72, but he continued to believe in that dream and I believed in him. I mean, there was no perfection. There was a lot of dysfunction in my life, but I recognize now that deep seed that was planted in his belief system that carried on to me.
Nice. I appreciate you sharing that so much. The word that really, stuck out to me is that word hunger, because to me, I think that when you have that hunger, it doesn't mean that everything around you is always going to be perfect and sunshine and rainbows and gumdrops and all those things. But if you have that hunger,
Mm.
sometimes that's the fuel that you need to continue on to see those dreams kind of come to fruition.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up because our hunger, our desire, our dreams, we have to stay in our own lane and well-wishers. And it's kind of like cauliflower foods. I put a cauliflower on my vision board and I wasn't even crazy about cauliflower, but I trusted because I trusted whatever went on that board was something that mattered. And then a year later, I'm 24 hours a day, producing this and perfecting this product and creating it. And I had such a passion for it, and then I brought on a business partner and that's a whole other episode. But the fact is, so many people said no one's going to eat cauliflower pizza crust. But I believed in that dream. I believed the product was needed. I thought there was a market for it. I had no idea how to do it. I had no idea how to, but I believed in it and I stayed step by step. I didn't take the whole thing on. When I needed the next level, I figured it out. And you wouldn't believe how far Google will go. Hey, I need a chemist for the ingredients breakdowns. Oh, I need a raw food license. Oh, oops, did I do that? I mean, it was a constant mistake after mistake after mistake that I learned from. There
Yeah.
was no perfection. If I sat and researched it all, it never would have got done. You just do it.
Yeah, I love that, and it's so funny you say that because I always say I got my bachelor's at Google, I got my master's at YouTube University because there's so much that's there that you can kind of learn to continue on.
Yeah,
But again, that hunger ends up being so strong. And one of the things I wrote down is that so many times we get attached to the how, like how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that, how we're going to make cauliflower, like all those things. But I feel like it's
right.
that fuel, that why that ends up being
Yeah.
the thing that matters the most.
Yeah, it immobilizes us. I mean, and all of our power is, we only have one really big power, the right to choose. That's where all our
Mm.
control is. We have no other control. But the past doesn't need us. The future doesn't need us. The here and the now, which is our choices in this moment, that's what's needed, and to move that needle forward. So you see people that are successful, and if you sit down and talk to them, it's the power, the action they're willing to take, the imperfect action. There is no there People get really hung up on the perfect action. I coach a lot of coaches. They're waiting for the right moment to launch. They're waiting for the right message. They're cloning someone else's. Listen, we're not reinventing the wheel out here. It's just
Yeah.
like Nike, just do it. Best phrase ever. You know, I wish I came up with that, but we're all just doing it, and we're all just doing it imperfectly. And we have to say, oop. And the thing of it is, I love universal laws because we we move very quickly. Heaven loves speed, and the law of polarity means if the desire is there, the answer is already on the playing field. We're just boom, we're on the
Mm.
playing field. But if we're sitting here thinking about it, the ego steps in, blocks us, keeps us in the maze. We're rubbing up against that terror barrier, and that's just newness. The newness of not knowing what's coming, the newness of not knowing what the next step is. We don't need to know. We don't need
Yeah,
to know what it is. We just need to
yeah,
do it.
absolutely. And I feel like that, not, I'm going to say unknowingness. I don't even know if that's a word, is the
Yeah,
thing
I
that
like it.
sometimes,
Unknowingness. Yeah.
yeah, it stops us in our tracks. And I think that that's where we don't realize that there's a strong opportunity, which is why I love that you were able to witness that with your dad that you mentioned. You saw the polarities, you saw the really
Yeah.
high highs and the not so high highs as well too. And I think so many times when
Yeah.
people jump into, I want to start something, I want to build something, we sometimes don't have awareness around the polarity of the entire journey of the highs and the lows and all
Right.
those things. We just see one and say, "Hey, I want that," and not realizing that we, to some degree, probably need the other so that we can even know and
Right.
appreciate that.
Well, and we might have a limited belief that we're not smart enough, we're not good enough. We didn't come from a background that supports this. I watched my dad grow, and I watched the hunger, but I was like, when my first big job was the United States Chamber of Commerce. They hired me. I was the last one they hired. I was the black sheep. I didn't have the law degree. So in my mind, it was always, you're not smart enough, you're not smart enough. I
Mm.
had a lot to prove because it was, and I set records that have never been broken. I have more Eagle plaques in my garage. I have cases of them because I was hungry, and I didn't even know that I wasn't competing against anyone. I just had a drive that I wanted to do my very best.
Mm.
And that's all we're required to do is our very best. And when we know better, we're required to do better. So my dad was so proud that I got that job and supported business. And I was really proud too. But I was never meant to do that. But it was such a great launching off point. I learned so much about myself and where my stories were, where my crash and burns were, where my self sabotage was, what
Mhm.
stories were leading the show of, oh, wait a minute, how can you do this? And how can you achieve that when you're not smart enough? You don't have that law degree. So I was really stuck on not having the degree. And if I could just share with people that most of the people that are making millions and billions do not have degrees. They don't have degrees. And it shouldn't stop you. We're out here learning. And if you have a hunger and a desire for it, the answer is available to you.
Yeah, and that ends up making, so much sense. And I think is a really great, message that, we often need to hear because so many times we can be in the perspective of like we're lacking something to get to whatever goal
Yeah.
we might be. And I think
Yeah.
that again, that ends up being one of the things that ends up robbing us and robbing the world, frankly, of that opportunity for us to be able to make an impact and then making the impact in the way that we can do better than anybody else.
Right. And again, going back to surrounding yourself with people that support you and believe in you, and even well-wishers and good friends, like no one's going to eat that cauliflower pizza crust. Nobody wants to smell cauliflower. That's never going to work. I remember being at a restaurant once, and it was launching. It was out there, and it was in Costco. I was so proud of it. And I'm like, and someone said, "Oh, have you heard of this cauliflower pizza crust company?" I would never eat that. The whole table, and I sat there listening. I never interjected, no matter how much I wanted to. But I heard of all of, and I thought, wow, I don't have to, number one, jump into every story, but if I would have taken that energy on and believed that, it would have never gone anywhere. So we have to really choose who we listen to. And I say, listen to your dream, listen to the passion,
Mhm.
listen to your drive. And when you have a bad day, be gentle with yourself, have grace, take a day off. When we're pushing too hard, we're tripping all over ourselves. Just listen to the rhythm of what it is you desire and how it's unfolding. What doors you're pounding on. If we back up, we'll see that another door is already opened, and that's the
Mhm.
direction we need to go.
Yeah, and that ends up being, so powerful to be able to kind of understand that. And sometimes when we're going through I guess the day to day, we can sometimes lose sight of that. But I love that you
Yeah.
mentioned that, and of course, I imagine you mentioned that a lot in the conversations that you have as well too. So I wanted to drill down a little bit more and hear a little bit more about Cauliflower Foods, what you're doing there, but also how you're working with and serving the clients and the people that you work with. How do you make that impact in the world?
Well, Cauliflower Foods, it's interesting what we claim. Now, when that started, the passion was incredible. I love to create. I love working with organic food. I love veggies. So it was just a natural that this was born. But the story, now this is a important part of the pivot of the story. I knew that I only wanted to do it for 2 years. Now, in order to run a company like that, and my story was, I'm not smart enough. I don't know the dynamics. I can't do it. So I manifested all of that, and I also pulled in a business partner that I thought was smarter than me that could run that bit. And actually, she took it all the way, and it's bravo. I mean,
Mm,
bravo. But I had started an LLC, a life coaching company, because that was my desire to
mhm,
do. I kind of tripped into creating that for my love of food and my love of creating. I'll probably do it again. I will probably create another product again because there's just such a desire, and I already know what that may be. But to run a company like that, I don't. My passion is not there. My passion shifted into life coaching, which, no surprise, was again another 6, 7 figure business because I created it out of the love and desire of helping people break through their limited beliefs, drop into their core values, understand what's driving them, understand that we cannot trust all the thoughts that come into our head, and that 95% of how we show up in the world is programming. It's the stories, it's our subconscious of things that we've created, and it is our responsibility for that 5% to redirect. It's kind of like the 1 degree. You're 1 degree off and you're in a plane, you're going to end up on a different island. Let's
right.
shift that 1 degree.
Yeah, and that ends up being so powerful. I love that, I'm fascinated by words. I love that word programming because I always think of and I was visualizing like just being
Yeah.
with the clicker, and
Yeah.
being able to turn the channel to a different program, to that program, to that program. And sometimes we don't even realize we have a clicker in our hand, which I think is one of
Beautiful analogy.
the
Beautiful
yeah,
analogy. I love that.
it's one of the things that we really I appreciate you sharing that because I think it brings a lot more light to the power, the opportunity, the choices that we can make, and that we do have that opportunity to flip and realize that we can be 1 degree, which ends up being a lot of degree closer to where we ultimately want to be.
Right. And dropping into that, knowing how vulnerable we are to this subconscious programming and perhaps where we came from, that vulnerability is what moves us forward if we drop in and we're willing to have a relationship with it. If we keep
Mm,
denying who we are and what drives us, and we just go with, I mean, and let's face it, it's called the subconscious programming for a reason. We often don't know we've got that clicker in our hand and that we can change our thoughts, our people, what we're doing. How many people are out there in a job that they don't dig, but they have a dream of something and they don't ever believe it can come to fruition. It's never going to happen because they can't make the change. Well, who told you you can't make a change? Well, where did that idea come from? And it's all in our choices. And one small move, one small idea that we grab a hold of and we claim, so important to claim it. I claim this. We activate universal laws and it just all of a sudden things start moving. And I'm big on signs. Signs will show up everywhere and guide us if we're watching. If we are in subconscious programming, we're a little bit blind to everything. Signs are everywhere showing us which way to go and we don't see them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I almost wonder, do you feel like that's part of what I would like to call your secret sauce? The thing you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique is that ability to kind of course, understand, the business, the life aspects. But I always say we forget about the human aspect of business and the human aspect of
Yeah.
life, frankly, that those things, the subconscious, the program, all those things
Yeah.
really kind of lay a foundation according to like where we end up being, where our organizations end up being. Do you feel like that's part of like what sets you apart and makes you unique?
Perhaps. I think that our heart has to be connected. I think we're so, especially as a woman out here, where, I'm a lot of energy, I'm a lot of power, and people can be intimidated by that, but I'm a lot of heart and I stay connected to my heart energy because I understand that my drive is connected to my soul. And that is always asking, the alchemist in me is always asking, what's right about this situation? The ego wants to make everything wrong and judge. And it keeps me just, if I'm in a 10-lane highway, boom, I'm out of my own lane. If I stay in my
Mm,
own lane, I'm connected to my heart, my desire, what moves me, what I'm connected to, what I'm paying attention to. Kind of like you popped up and I'm like, I love his energy.
mm,
And, we're just, I let that guide me. I never navigate by the coulda, shoulda, wouldas and what it should look like. And I just show up on what I am. I claim all my I ams. I'm grounded in that. And I think our body holds a lot of energy. And sometimes we have to heal from stories that don't serve us or just relinquish them and say, you know what, is that bringing me closer to the goal, to the business I want to create, to the CEO that I am? We are all CEOs in our life. If we want to take this to personal development, a lot of people come to me and say, hey, I want to build $1 billion business. Okay, well, are you the CEO are you the authority in your life? What's that? Well, okay, well, let's start there
mhm.
because we are all our own authority. We have mentors and we look and we admire and we learn, but we are our own authority. We know ourselves best. No one knows us better than us.
Yeah, I love that, and that word that you said earlier really stuck with me because you said the word relationship, relationship with ourselves, relationship with our past, relationship with experience. I imagine all those things, and I think when you do say, do you have that mastery of yourself? Even,
Yeah.
if we haven't really, for lack of a better term, maybe done the work, or even maybe acknowledged that there
Yeah.
needs to be a relationship with that, then how can we really like conquer the world, and which might be one of our goals and aspirations, when we
Yeah.
haven't even, for lack of a better term, conquered ourselves.
Well, and we call in what we need. If people are constantly triggering us, we're calling them in. Maybe we need a better boundary, and they're always pushing our boundaries, and we're like, "Well, you." No, us, us, us. It's always about us. I love the book, The Four Agreements.
Mm.
Always do our best, and it's never about someone else. It is about us, and they show up to teach us. This business partner, people, showed up to teach me how powerful I was, how smart I was, how to set boundaries, how to have better relationships. I'm forever grateful. I don't look at anything as a loss. I look at it as a win. I loved creating it. I also claimed the 2 years, and it was 2 years that, I exited with the percentage of the company, and it was exactly the right timing. But if I resisted and I stayed a victim, look what happened to me. I wouldn't have created what I'm creating now and helping so many more people, which is what my desire always was.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of reminds me of something I always say is if you run your own race, you can't lose. And I feel like you
Yeah.
had that
I love that. Yeah.
yeah, you had that awareness of self, that mastery of yourself, to know that that wasn't your race, or your race maybe for a certain period of time. And then being
Yeah.
able to kind of pivot and change, allow you to kind of, for lack of a better term, relinquish that so that you can continue to run the race that is yours.
Oh, yeah, relinquish is a very good word. I had to let go of what I thought was, and really important, what other people had to say.
Mm,
There can be a lot of well-wishers that can sabotage because we're taking on their energy, and it's their energy, it's their story. And, we're put through their process, and we have to stay in our process. And it
yeah.
looks quite different than anyone else's. What drives me, what makes me hungry, what makes me show up is different than anyone else. This is why our greatest power is, this one thumbprint. There's only one of you. There's only one of me. There isn't, this is, there's so many people out there that want to be like somebody else. And I'm like, oh, you've missed your greatest calling. Your greatest power is you. Don't forget you in this process.
Yeah,
You're the one
absolutely.
that's going to make it happen. No one's going to make it happen for you. And
Hmm.
as a CEO, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I know that. No one makes me get up at 2 a.m. in the morning. No one shows up for my clients around the world. I do, because the hunger, the passion, the integrity, and my core belief systems. And we want to drop into core values. It's all connected. It's like we have to connect all those dots. And if we keep failing ourselves, if we have a time management problem, we reset and say, what's perfect about this? What can I do better? We're
Yeah,
required to do it better if we know how.
absolutely. It kind of reminds me of the quote, "Be yourself," because everybody else is already taken. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we're not being ourselves
Yeah.
and not appreciating having that relationship with
Yeah. And I say, let
ourselves.
that freak flag fly, because the more you're you, the more
Yeah.
people lean in, the more they're intrigued, the more you try to, um, the ego always wants to come in
Yeah.
and make things, I wouldn't say simpler, but um, more protected.
Mm,
So we're less vulnerable.
mm,
But no matter how hard I try, even on anybody, like I was on a podcast show yesterday called The Blossoming Women, no matter how hard I try, she asked me to stay on longer. And I'm like, yep, yep, I'll do it. I went deep. I went hard. Someone said, I've never heard you go. And I was crying. I mean, I was all
mm.
in. Be all in. This is your one life. We don't get a second shot at this. Be all in all the time. Every morning, what can I do today? This may be my last day. What can I do today? And be all in. I'm going to leave everything on the table every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Leave it all on the table, all on the field, and be able to kind of make sure that there's nothing left per se in the tank, and you've done everything you can do to kind of
Right.
move those things forward.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
And
wanted go ahead.
yeah. No, and I was going to say, and if it's not a red letter day, if it's a day that's like, wow, I can't believe I just had a day like that, we
Hmm.
reset. And
Yeah,
and like we were talking earlier, we both have tons of water on our desk, big contain water, tea, hydration,
yeah.
protein drinks. We've got to feed our body. We've got to take care of our body. We've got to do all the things to keep ourselves in balance and check. And when we're not, then we're required to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny you said that because I was gonna ask you a little bit more of what I call a CEO hack, which is kind of an app, a book, or even a habit that you have that makes you more effective and efficient. I wonder if that reset is part of, or at least one of the CEO hacks that you really lean on that does help you to be more effective and efficient.
You know, um, People ask me that a lot. What do I do? What is my routine? I think it takes 20 days, they say, to build a habit. I say it's 45,
Mhm,
really, before the body starts understanding the rhythm of a routine.
mhm,
But I wake up in the morning and it's just, I don't grab my phone. I grab lemon water, and then I love a half a cup of coffee. And that's what I limit myself to a day. I love the smell of coffee. I love coffee, but I also know that my central nervous system doesn't do well with a lot of coffee.
mhm.
So I don't do a lot of caffeine. So then I switched to herbal tea for the day and tons of water. So all of these, I build it in. And that rhythm is, I set my alarm for time management. I have an hour to read, meditate. We talked earlier, I don't lead with being a psychic, but I doodle, which tells me stories, and it unfolds for my clients for the day. I see things, and through the doodling, stories unfold. And I love that. So I doodle for about a half an hour, and it looks like mindless doodling, but it's unbelievable things that are the revelations. And then I put that aside, because I will look at my client list for the day or what's planned for the day. And I really never prepare for what I need to do. I prepare my energy, because everything is energy. We're all connected. There is no separation. And if my vibration is high because I've got clear energy and I'm not bogged down by, and worry is just the inability to solve a problem. If I can't solve anything, I'm staying in my power, which is what is needed of me today. And with raising that vibration is staying hydrated, my form of meditation, my doodling, you know, um, I always get dressed because I'm on Zoom. I always wear sweats and my baby blue slippers on the bottom, and I always get
Mhm.
dressed on the halfway. But you know what? I own that. Sometimes I get dressed all the way. It just depends. But it's a Friday. You know, you
Yeah.
work through the week and you just work with the energy, not against it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I almost wonder, like, I imagine people sometimes like have this, intuition or thoughts or like maybe I should do this or maybe I should do that. How have you seen or do you even recommend as far as like being able to kind of trust that and lean into that? Because I can imagine like when you're running your own race and you don't see anybody else running the same race, you're like, wait a minute, I'm doing it all wrong. I'm not doing the right
Yeah,
thing. But in
yeah,
reality, if you are staying true to yourself, sometimes and oftentimes you will do things in a different way, and that's okay. But how do you stay true and trust that?
yeah. I can guarantee you that your body has told you more than once no, and what came out of your mouth was yes. I
Mm.
can remember pivotal moments in my life where I was a yes person, and that was I clearly boundaries. I'm a boundaries coach because I built them. I apply them now because I need them. I did not grow up with healthy boundaries. I was a yes person. I was a people pleaser. Now I listen to my body and it's usually a no and then I'll expand to a yes. Well,
Mhm.
potentially I could do that. So I use statements of affirmation. So listen to the body. There was a pivotal time where I said yes came out of my mouth. My body was screaming hell no. And it was a big business decision. I
Mhm.
don't regret that because it taught me one of the greatest gifts that I teach now. But in that, now I drop in. I take a deep breath. Breathing is so important. Staying out of reactivity and staying in your power, which is your response. And if you listen to your body, it's got the answer. You may be nervous on how they're going to receive it. So, give yourself some space. Create some space with a statement of affirmation. Maybe it's not a no. Just let me get back to you. Let me consider that.
Mhm.
And this keeps you in your integrity.
Yeah, and that ends up being so powerful. I imagine if you're maybe, like you said, not in that space to be able to answer that question, it's okay to say, "Let me think about it. Let me come back to you. Let me," whatever it
Yeah,
is, to create that space so that you can, I guess, recharge and make sure you're reconnected to who you are, your mission, your vision, all the things that you want, so
right.
that you can make sure that your decisions, your actions, all the things are in alignment with that.
Yeah, look at how many times we're in reactivity
Mhm.
and it never ends well. But if we respond with our body, it's always a great connection. It's
Yeah.
it's something that we can teach ourselves through breath, through pause, and through understanding perhaps that we need to apply better boundaries if we show up in the world and we know that we're trying to please everybody. You just think of yourself being in a boat and every time you please someone and that you're overextending yourself, you're jumping out of your boat and you're in the water, you're abandoning yourself over and over again. So if you want to get anywhere
Mhm.
in this life, and this was a tough one as a people pleaser, you have to put yourself first. And at first I'm like, oh, that's so selfish. That's so selfish. And I'm a mom of three, and I'm like, children come first. The world comes first. I'm such a kid. No, no, no. You come first. I come first. I mean, we often hear that, if that pitcher is empty, we've got nothing more to give. We've got to keep that energy full, ready, and then we can give. But we can't
Absolutely.
give when we're depleted. It's not even effective.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup is the saying,
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah, there's that
yeah,
analogy I was looking for. That's that
yeah,
simple analogy. You can't
yeah.
pour from an empty cup. Nope.
Absolutely. And even I think anytime I fly, and we were talking a little bit before we hopped on about, traveling and things like that.
Yeah.
Whenever in the beginning they say put your oxygen mask on first before you help somebody else, because you have to be in a place where you have something to pour from, have something to give. But so many times we're
Absolutely.
so depleted, and then we're out trying to help people with depleted energy, depleted everything really. And it not
Right.
only doesn't help them, it also doesn't help ourselves as well.
Right. And, we're not fixers. I used to have a sign above my head that said, come one, come all, I can fix it. This was years ago.
Mm,
And now it just says, let me ask you the question of what you want. What do you
mm,
need? I call myself a master question asker. I'm
mm,
not here to fix anything, to solve. Yes, their problems get solved, but they solve them. I don't. I'm always grateful, but I cannot be attached to the energy of people loving me or not loving me. I have to love me, and that's their story. And this is the ego wants to come in and just lap it up. Oh, everyone loves me. This is so great. I'm doing such good work in the world. And then someone comes along and pulls the rug out from underneath you and says, I don't think you're so great. And we're like, oh, why? Well, you know what? We have to, we have to love ourselves enough to know that we're not everyone's cup of tea. and not everyone's going to love us. We could be the biggest, juiciest peach ever, and someone just doesn't like peaches, or they may be
Yeah.
allergic to them. It's just we have to continually check in with ourselves and detach from other stories and stay true to our story of who we are. It keeps us in our integrity too. Keeps us
Absolutely.
grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. And I almost feel like you get we can sometimes try to get our value externally, but to have that value internally, if somebody says I don't like peaches, it's like, okay, well, this is me, this is who I am, and take it or
Yeah.
kind of leave it. Do you feel
Yeah.
like that might be like what I would call your CEO nugget, like a little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice? I usually say it might be something you would tell your favorite client, or if you have to do a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Hmm. My favorite nugget. Let's see if I wrote any notes for my favorite nugget. I tend, like I told you, not to write too much down. Um, my favorite nugget, I think, would be there's so many, but it might be, are you giving yourself permission to show up? I
Mm,
don't think people realize that they have to give themselves permission to show up, to create, to claim. If you don't give yourself permission, where do we start? You're back behind the starting line, thinking, watching, comparison, and then of course the act of comparison. You're comparing and you're like, I could never catch up to them. Well, of course you can't. But you start where you are. And people need you where you are. They may not need that person that's, 20,000 steps down the road. This is where all our power is. But if we're constantly giving it away by projecting outwards, we have to give ourselves permission to be new, to start at the starting point. Everybody wants to start. I mean, I thought it was a travesty when people could buy the blue checks. We worked hard for those blue checks, and now everyone can buy them. I think someone just told me the other day, and I'm like, really? And I'm like, oh, well, and I'm glad. I hope it's a form of protection, or buy followers or buy. Well, you know what? Or you could build and it's okay to be new. It's
mm.
okay to start somewhere because somebody can see you starting and it may give them the courage to start too.
Yeah, it goes back to what you said about that vulnerability, and it's like giving yourself permission to be yourself and to trust the process and not, beat
Yeah.
ourselves up about where we are, where we think that we should be, and sometimes that comparison, even to ourselves and where
Yeah.
we think that we are, can sometimes be the biggest downfall.
Well, and I think the biggest lesson, you asked that, and it just took me to a story of
Hmm.
after Cauliflower Foods, I created Cali Soul Coaching, and
Hmm.
I was going to launch from there. I built a big site on recipes, all the things I loved, and it did well, but it didn't do great. I was
Hmm.
still hanging on to the image of launching from there, which my knee, I was totally, my knees were cut off there. But I wouldn't let go of the identity of I created this. This is the launch. I thought it was clever. I thought when I finally surrendered and claimed exactly where I needed to be, and I mean, I started at ground zero. I bought Dana Grant, the name danagrant.com. That's where I started. I took ownership of who I was. I was no longer, that's something I created, just like working for the chamber, just like setting records and working for health. All those things are pieces of who I am, but they're not my identity.
Hmm.
I'm Dana Grant. That's my ownership. I'm starting there and I didn't launch from anything. I started fresh. I started new. And I had to be vulnerable enough to say, here I am. Here I am, world, starting over again. And there were many people that said, what happened over there? Well, let me tell you about that. There's the biggest, best lesson I ever learned. There's no victimhood. Victimhood will keep us in the maze. I love to call it the maze because it's big, it's vast, and our stories that we create keep us there. And
Yeah,
if you want to be a
absolutely.
good CEO, a good authority in your life, you stay in your empowerment, claim, ownership. What do I need to do today?
Absolutely. I love that. And again, that going back to that clicker and having the opportunity to get out of that maze sometimes by switching the button, changing the
Yeah.
volume, whatever it is that it might be.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Dana, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Freedom, independence, uh, it gives me the right to show up in my authority, be my own person, create limitless potential. I see this as just this limitless universe. And being a CEO means that I can do just about anything I desire because it's my cap I put on every day.
I love it, and I think that limitless power is something that really sticks with me because I think so many times we don't realize that we have the paintbrush in our hands and the easel in front of us, and we can paint that
Yeah.
picture in the on the canvas in the way that we want, and we sometimes don't realize that. So absolutely love that
Yeah, and as a
definition.
CEO, any day, every day we show up can be different. Any opportunity can show up, and unlike going to a job, we kind of know what's going to happen every day. We've got a routine, we've got a job title. As a CEO, it means we can create and call in anything. You want to go bigger? Go bigger. I love visualizing yourself as the CEO you want to be, not meeting yourself where you are now. It's always my
Mm,
higher self. She's leading. I always keep it, I have a little velvet chair next to me. And oftentimes, if we want to go deeper, my inner child, my different thoughts, my different ideas, the stories, all scarcity, lack. Oh, we all carry those stories. I'll make her sit over there. I'm like, I'm busy being a CEO. You sit over here. Do you trust me to go all the way? And it
mm.
didn't used to be yes. It was like, no, I'm scared. Well, now she's not scared. She's like, yeah, take over. Let's go. But we have to talk to that inner critic. We have to talk to our inner critic, our inner child. We've got layers of stories in there. And we have to say, that's not true. Just because we thought it doesn't make it true.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, Dana, truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I want
Yeah.
to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get a hold of you, find about all the awesome things that you're working on.
Oh gosh, didn't wasn't ready for that. I just want to leave people with the hope of empowerment that anything they're dreaming of today, anything they're wanting, anything they're needing, I do free mentorship too. They can reach out, they can book a 15-minute call, ask a question, and we can do a hot seat coaching session. It's called a power session. As an intuitive, I usually have a good idea when people show up and ask one thing, what they're really wanting to know. And I love to do that. I love giving back. I love to see people plant those seeds. And we're planting seeds every day. Every day that we're wanting something, we're planting a seed. And I'd love to see that, just to germinate that, to just watch it grow. So they can reach me at danagrant.com, the real Dana Grant on Instagram. I like social media. I'm not always out there, but I love to interact. I love putting information out there. My stories usually are what really is going on in my world. But yeah, I love to connect. Connection is key.
Absolutely. And to make it even easier to connect, we're of course going to have the links and information in the show notes as well too. And Dana spends a lot of time, I'll say on both sides of the mic being a guest, but also,
Yeah.
some awesome podcasts, that you're
Sure.
working on as well too in your show. So truly appreciate you for taking some time out. And I appreciate that seed analogy as well too. I think learning that of course we have the seed, but also we have the choice where to place the seed and how to place the seed is something that we sometimes forget. So thank you for
Yeah.
reminding us of that. And I hope you have a
Yeah.
phenomenal rest of the day.
You're wonderful. I love spending time with you, Grisham. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.